はい、今日は友達のジョージ君に来てもらってます。Welcome to my channel, George.
Nice to meet you, Justin. Thanks for having me here.
So, as you're living in Canada, I want to ask you about Canada because many Japanese people using and working holidays would love to go to Canada and work there. So, what about working condition in Canada? Is it very easy to find jobs for Asians?
It really depends on what kind of job you're looking for, but generally, at this point, I would say it's not that easy to find a job. But I think Asian people do have a little bit of advantage because the working culture in Asia, it's a little bit harsher than Canada. So a lot of Asians are more willing to work hard, right? They're willing to push themselves. And so for Canada, the pace is a little bit more laid back. The working hours are a lot more clear cut. There are less tendency for overtime. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you really enjoy work and life balance, it's a pretty good place.
In Japan, it's really hard. It's really strict to work in a condition. So many people suffer from stress and they get mental disease. Does it happen in Canada as well?
I think in Canada, it's a lot more relaxed compared to Asia. So usually there are a lot of, so for example, if someone has some kind of stress problem from work, usually we discuss this issue with our boss, and there's something called a stress leave. Yeah, where someone temporarily takes a few days off to de-stress themselves before they go back to work.
In Japan, we suffer from what we call power harassment, authority harassment, from boss to minors. Does it happen in Canada as well?
I'm pretty sure that happens in Canada as well, but there's less tendency for that kind of environment because in Canada we tend to try to see each other as equal. So there's less. It's a lot less defined whether who is the boss and who is the subordinate. We try to not even use the word subordinate. We just say that, oh, this guy is with whoever, and that's the manager.
What about the atmosphere in the office? In Japanese offices, sometimes you're not supposed to speak during working hours, and you're not allowed to watch smartphones. And you have to be very diligent, very serious when you're working. What about in Canada? Is it also the same? Or much more laid back, relaxed, a lot of laughter, smile during working hours?
I would say it's actually pretty casual. Like we make jokes, we chat once in a while. Obviously, there are still rules that you can't chat all the time. You need to work, right? And
can you eat snacks during working hours?
Some places, yes, actually. Yeah, because I think Canada is not that strict on rules. Most of the bosses just wants you to get the work done. So as long as you get the work done, you give the results that the boss is looking for. Most of the time, it's actually okay. It can be more or less negotiable. It's quite flexible there.
Do you know the duty hours? Is it allowed to watch smartphones and talk with your friends during working hours?
No, I would say that's not something that is considered acceptable by most workplaces. But yeah, some people still do it secretly, right? Like they would hide in the back or inside the washroom. They would talk on their phone.
Oh, I understand. That's the same in Japan as well.
Yeah.
But in some Asian countries, in a restaurant as well, they talk or they use line during working hours. I see that kind of thing quite often, but it's not allowed in Canada.
It's not allowed,
it's more strict.
No, I would say it happens quite often too. It might happen more than in Japan, I would say, but by the rules, you're still not supposed to.
Right, by the rules.
Yeah.
Then, What about average income of 40 years old office workers in Canada? Not entry level.
On average, the annual income would be around 60,000 Canadian dollars.
Oh, that's a lot more higher. In Japan, it's about 40,000 Japanese yen. So it's about 1.5 more
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah.
So what kind of job can you get more money? A
Oh,
doctor or lawyers could get much higher salary.
doctor, lawyer, engineers, or waiters, if you can.
Waiters can get good wages.
Oh yeah, waiters actually can get pretty good.
Why
pretty good
that?
Because of the tipping culture, partially. Yeah, so you get quite a bit of tips if.
How much tip can you get out of whole salary?
So some people would go as high as 1/3 of the tip becoming their part of their income.
Oh, really? 1/3? That's a
Yeah.
lot of money, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, or even up to 50% if like there are some exceptions, but yeah, they can go as high as 50% of their wage.
Oh, in Japan, waiters and waitresses have a lowest wage. But in Canada, it's really different.
Yeah.
Then another question is going to be like this: is there any prejudice toward Asians in Canada? As you're Asian, did you
Yeah.
really feel some prejudice from Caucasians or Black people, stuff like that?
Well, for me, the prejudice, I don't really get a lot of prejudice from like non-white Canadians, to be honest. But when I do, I've lived in Canada for more than 20 years. So the racist encounters that I've had in the last, 20 something years, it's only been a handful. Like it's probably around like 4 or 5 times, really. Other times I haven't really met anyone actually like make any racist comments towards me because it's something that is condemned by society in Canada.
So you had a very happy life in Canada, basically.
Yeah, it was
Not
pretty
very
relaxed.
severe, prejudice.
No.
Like people make faces to you like this.
That's something that probably happened. That would happen more than 20 years ago, but it only happened to me as a kid in elementary school because those kids didn't know better, right? But right now, I think because at that time my elementary school there were only 5 Asians in our school, so that's why they didn't know better. But right now the culture is pretty mixed, so no one really does that anymore.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So last but not least, about the cost of living in Canada. Is it really expensive to live in Canada? Can you tell us about cost of living, housing, and food, stuff like that?
Yeah, well, expensive or not, I think it really depends on where you come from. Right now, on average, the rent because I'm from Vancouver, so I'm just speaking in terms of Vancouver, to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in city center, it would cost roughly 3,000 Canadian dollars a month.
That's really much more expensive in Japan and Taiwan as well.
Yeah. To rent, if you want somewhere a little bit cheaper, like $2,000 a month, it would be a more suburb area.
Suburb areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if any of viewers out there, you're a student and you just want to go to Vancouver or Canada in general, like Vancouver or Toronto, they're roughly around the same price. I would recommend shared houses. That would put you somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500 a month instead.
It's going to be cheaper.
Yeah, it's going to
if you
be
go to
significantly cheaper.
Suburbs.
Yeah.
Then what about restaurants? If you eat 3-course dinner at a fancy restaurant, how much do they have to pay?
Usually, if it's a fancy restaurant, it can range somewhere from about $40 all the way to $60, $70, depending what you choose.
It will not exceed $100.
It shouldn't exceed $100. I've dined in a French restaurant in city center. It was a very, very high-end restaurant. It was roughly around $100, including tips and taxes. Yeah.
So about taxes, how much do they have to pay at least?
The sales tax is 12%, but it might get a little bit more complicated with groceries because groceries are actually only 5%. We only pay one tax. Yeah. And same with dining out at restaurants. It's only 5% tax.
So about tips, how much do they have to pay for the food?
Usually
For the
tips
service?
range between 15 to 25%. But me personally, I don't consider myself a rich guy, so I usually just choose the second lowest one available on the card machine. Usually it's around 18%. So usually it's 15, 18, 20, and 25, I think, depending on which company.
So if the service is really bad, you're not happy about it, but you still have to pay tax?
Yes, you will have to pay tax. So tips, you pay...
Taxes you have to pay. I mean, tips.
Yeah.
If you experience really bad service and you're not happy about it,
Yes.
but do you still have to pay tips for that?
No, you don't have to pay tips. Sometimes some people might actually come and ask you why you're not paying tips, and they might try to give you a hard time. But I don't think that is professional. I mean, if that really happens to you, I would take that to the manager and complain about this person because it's not professional.
If you're going to speak with the manager will be satisfied about your excuse. But do they still insist you paying tips?
So they can't insist you paying tips unless you have more than, I believe it's 6 people. So if you have more than 6 people in one gathering, then by law they have the right to put tips, 15% tips, I believe, onto your bill, even though typically that is not really implemented. But they can't do that. Nobody really does that though. So far, I never seen anyone do it. But other than that, tips are optional. By law, nobody is obligated to pay tips if they really don't like the service.
So do you yourself have experience paying no tax and no tips if the service is really bad?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Then what about happen after that? Do they chase you for tips?
Well, some no, and for one that I really remember, that owner, she actually tried to give me a hard time. It's like, oh, why aren't you paying tips?
Oh, they ask you.
Yeah, she asked me, and I
not paying tips.
Yeah, and I explained to her like the food came and it wasn't fully cooked, right? So because I was dining out with my mother, I was a little bit upset about it. And I raised that to her, and she still insisted I pay tips, but obviously I didn't pay any tips. I just walked away because I'm not obligated by law to pay any tips.
I understand that. Okay, today we can hear a lot of good story from you. Maybe your story will benefit most of the Japanese people.
Yeah, hopefully it can be of any help. Yeah, thanks for having me here again, Justin.
Okay, everybody, see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you later.